The champagne burned my eyes, but the sting on my cheek was far worse. 50 guests at the rehearsal dinner froze. The clinking of silverware stopped. The only sound in the private dining room of the Obsidian was the dripping of expensive Dom Perignon from my hair onto the floor. My sister, Jessica, stood over me, the empty flute still clutched in her hand. She looked like an angel in her white cocktail dress, but her eyes were pure, unadulterated malice. "Oops," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness that didn't mask the venom. My hand slipped. "But honestly, Clara, you look better this way. Wet and pathetic. Like a drowned rat." I looked at my mother. I waited for her to stand up, to defend me, to say something. Instead, she sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose as if I were the inconvenience. "Oh, for God's sake, Clara, go clean yourself up in the kitchen sink. And don't come back until you look presentable. You're ruining the aesthetic of the photos." The groom, Mark, chuckled nervously. "Yeah, Clara. Try not to stain the carpet. It costs more than your car." I wiped the alcohol from my jaw. I felt the familiar burn of humiliation in my chest, a fire that had been stoked for 20 years. I looked around the room at the aunts who ignored me, the cousins who mocked me, and the parents who tolerated me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because they had no idea who I really was. In the architecture of the hollowed-out institution called the Sterling family, the roles were cast before I was even born. Jessica was the golden child. I was the scapegoat. It wasn't subtle. It was a sledgehammer reality I lived with every day. When Jessica turned 16, she got a brand new Mercedes convertible with a red bow on top. When I turned 16, I got a lecture on fiscal responsibility and a bus pass. "We just want you to be independent, Clara," my father had said, not looking up from his newspaper. "Jessica needs support because she has potential. She's going places. You need to learn how to survive the hard way." They were right. I did learn. While Jessica flunked out of 2 private colleges, tuition fully paid by my parents' dwindling retirement fund, I was working 3 jobs. I scrubbed floors, I answered phones, and I studied until my eyes bled. I put myself through business school on scholarships and sheer grit. 7 years ago, I left. I moved to the city, changed my number, and only spoke to them on holidays. To them, I was a failure. I let them believe it. When I visited for Christmas, I wore thrift store clothes. I told them I was a freelance assistant struggling to make rent. I watched them smirk with that toxic mix of pity and superiority. It fed their egos to have a loser in the family. It made Jessica's mediocrity look like success by comparison. "Poor Clara," my mother would say, pouring wine for Jessica but not for me. "Maybe if you had your sister's charisma, you'd have found a husband by now to take care of you." They didn't know the truth. They didn't know that freelance assistant was a lie. They didn't know that 7 years ago, I co-founded a tech logistics firm called Nexus. They didn't know that 3 years ago, we went public. They didn't know that I wasn't just wealthy. I was wealthy in a way they couldn't even comprehend. I didn't just have money. I had power. I owned buildings in downtown Chicago. I sat on boards of charities they tried to get invited to. But I kept it secret. Why? Because I knew them. If they knew I had money, they would drain me dry. They would claim it was family money. They would destroy everything I built just like they destroyed my self-esteem. So, when Jessica got engaged to Mark, a pompous junior investment banker with more debt than sense, I stayed the poor sister. They chose the Obsidian for the wedding. It was the most exclusive hotel and event center in the state. 6-month waiting list. Minimum spend of $50,000. My mother called me a month before the wedding. "Clara, we're inviting you," she said, her tone making it sound like a burden. "But listen, money is tight with the deposit. Since you're not doing anything important with your life, you can come early and help the coordinator. Sort of, earn your plate." I agreed. I agreed because... the Obsidian? I bought the Obsidian via a holding company 6 weeks ago. It was my latest acquisition. My signature was on the deed. My employees ran the place. I wanted to see how far they would go. I wanted to see if there was a single drop of love left in them. The morning of the wedding was a chaotic symphony of narcissism. I arrived at the bridal suite at 6 a.m., as ordered. The room smelled of hairspray and desperation. My mother was running around barking orders at the makeup artists, while Jessica sat on a velvet throne, drinking a mimosa. "You're late," Jessica snapped, not looking at me. "My train needs steaming, and don't burn it like you burn everything else." I took the steamer. I worked in silence. Around 9 a.m., the general manager of the hotel, Mr. Henderson, knocked on the door. I knew Henderson. He was a good man, terrified of me, but he knew the protocol. "Do not acknowledge me as the owner until I give the signal." He looked at me, a flicker of panic in his eyes, then looked at my mother. "Mrs. Sterling," Henderson said, clearing his throat. "I'm afraid there's an issue with the final payment. The credit card on file was declined. Per our contract, the balance of $20,000 must be cleared before the ceremony begins at noon." My mother turned pale. Then, red. "That's impossible!" she shrieked. "Do you know who we are? Run it again. It's probably your cheap machine." "I've run it 3 times, madam," Henderson said politely. "It's declined." My father was cornered. "Look, can't we pay you next week? After the gifts come in?" "I'm afraid not," Henderson said. "Policy." Silence filled the room. Then, all 3 of them turned to look at me. "Clara," my mother said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Give me your credit card." I blinked. "What?" "Mom, my card has a limit of $500. You know that." "Don't lie to me," she screamed, lunging forward and grabbing my purse. She dumped the contents onto the floor, my cheap phone, my keys, my wallet. She tore through my wallet. "You must have some savings. Give it to us. This is your sister's day. Are you going to ruin it because you're selfish?" "I don't have $20,000, Mom," I said calmly. Jessica threw her mimosa glass against the wall. It shattered. "You are useless. You've always been useless. Why are you even here?" Then, Jessica's eyes lit up with a twisted idea. She looked at Mr. Henderson. "Wait," Jessica said. "My sister. She's used to service work. She's poor. What if she works off the debt?" My blood went cold. "Excuse me?" I asked. "She can work the reception," Jessica said, smiling cruelly. "Put her in a uniform, make her serve the drinks. You can deduct her labor from the bill, and we'll pay the rest later. Just let the ceremony start, please." My mother nodded vigorously. "Yes, that's a perfect solution. Clara, you've waited tables before. It's the only thing you're good at." Mr. Henderson looked at me, horrified. He was waiting for me to fire them all, but I gave him a tiny, imperceptible nod. "Play along." I suppose we can make an arrangement," Henderson stuttered. "But she would have to be in uniform. Staff are not permitted to socialize with guests." "Fine," my father grunted. "She doesn't have any friends here anyway." So, they did it. On my sister's wedding day, they stripped me of my bridesmaid dress which I had paid for and handed me a black vest and tie. They made me tie my hair back. They handed me a tray of champagne. For the next 3 hours, I was invisible. I walked through the ballroom, my ballroom serving people who used to make fun of my clothes in high school. I topped off the glass of my aunt, who looked at me and laughed. "Oh, Clara," she tittered. "I didn't know you found a job here." "Well, at least you're working. Keep the napkins coming, dear." I watched my parents sitting at the head table, laughing, eating the filet mignon I had approved on the menu months ago. They looked relieved. They thought they had gotten away with it. They thought they had successfully turned their problem into my punishment. But the real storm was coming. At 7 p.m., the lights dimmed. The DJ announced a special surprise. My mother took the microphone. She was drunk. "Thank you all for coming," she slurred. "We are so proud of Jessica. She is the jewel of our family. And we want to thank the staff for their hard work." She pointed directly at me, standing near the kitchen doors holding a tray of dirty dishes. "Even the ones who disappoint us in life can still serve a purpose, right?" The room erupted in laughter. Cruel, raucous laughter. Jessica was cackling. I set the tray down on a side table. The glass rattled. I checked my watch. 7:05 p.m. The double doors at the back of the room burst open. The music cut out abruptly. 6 men in dark suits walked in. They weren't hotel security. They were private security. Flanking them was a woman in a sharp gray suit, my personal attorney, Evelyn. the guests murmured. My father stood up, swaying. Who is this? We didn't order a performance. Evelyn walked straight to the middle of the dance floor. She didn't look at the bride. She didn't look at the groom. She looked at Mr. Henderson. Is the owner on the premises? Evelyn asked, her voice projecting clearly through the silent hall. Mr. Henderson stepped forward, bowing slightly. Yes, Miss Vance. She is. Good, Evelyn said. Because we have a breach of contract. My mother stormed down from the stage. Excuse me. This is a private event. Get out before I call the police. Evelyn turned to my mother with a look of absolute boredom. Mrs. Sterling, you haven't paid for this event. You are currently trespassing. And worse, you have violated the labor laws regarding the staff. We made a deal, my father shouted. Clara is working it off. Clara, Evelyn repeated. You mean the CEO? The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop on the carpet. Jessica laughed nervously. CEO? CEO of what? The dish pit. Evelyn didn't answer. She turned towards the back of the room. Towards the kitchen doors. Towards me. Miss Sterling, Evelyn said, her voice changing to one of deep respect. We are ready for you. Mr. Henderson rushed over to me. He took the tray of dirty dishes from my hands and set it on the floor. I am so sorry, ma'am. I tried to intervene, but you insisted. I untied the black apron. I let it drop to the floor. I pulled the hair tie out of my hair, shaking it loose. I walked through the crowd. The guests parted like the Red Sea. I saw the confusion on their faces turn to shock as they recognized me, not as the cowering sister, but as the woman walking with a posture they had never seen before. I walked up to the dance floor and stood face to face with my mother and sister. You, my mother whispered, her face draining of color. What is going on? You asked for the owner, I said calmly. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. I'm here. Jessica shook her head. No. No. You're lying. You're broke. You live in a studio apartment. I live in the penthouse at the Street Regis. I corrected her softly. And I bought the obsidian 6 weeks ago because I knew you would try to pull a stunt like this with the payment. I turned to my father. You tried to pay for my sister's wedding with my dignity. I said. You forced me to serve you. You mocked me in front of everyone. I signaled to Henderson. He handed me a tablet. This is the bill, I said, scrolling. Venue rental, catering, damages for the wall Jessica broke, and a labor charge for my time. My consulting fee is $5,000 an hour. You made me work 4 hours. I turned the tablet to them. The total was astronomical. You can't be serious. Mark, the groom, stuttered. We're family. I looked him dead in the eye. No, I said. We're not. I was the help. Remember. I turned to Evelyn. Evict them. Immediately. The chaos that followed was clinically efficient. My security team didn't use violence. They simply removed the illusion. They cut the power to the DJ booth. They turned on the ugly, bright work lights. The waiters, my employees, who had been seething on my behalf all night, immediately began clearing the tables, taking the half-eaten food away from the guests. You can't do this! Jessica screamed, grabbing my arm. My security guard stepped in, gently but firmly removing her hand. Do not touch Miss Sterling. I'm her sister, Jessica shrieked, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. Clara, please, everyone is watching. You're humiliating me. I paused. I looked at her, really looked at her. You humiliated yourself, Jessica, I said. I just turned the lights on. Evelyn handed my father a thick envelope. This is a cease and desist. And a lawsuit for the unpaid balance. We will be placing a lien on your house on Monday morning. My father collapsed into a chair, one of my chairs. Clara, we're your parents. We raised you. You housed me, I corrected. You didn't raise me. You raised her. And now she can take care of you. I watched as the guests, the elite of the town, scrambled to leave. They didn't look at my family with sympathy. They looked at them like they were contagious. They realized the Sterlings were frauds. They realized the money was gone. Mark, the groom, was already on his phone in the corner. I heard him say, Mom? Yeah, it's a disaster. No, I think the marriage is off. They're bankrupt. Jessica heard it too. She slumped to the floor, her white dress pooling around her like a surrender flag. I didn't stay to watch them be physically escorted out. I didn't need to. The image of my mother, sitting in the harsh fluorescent light, realizing her golden ticket had just bounced, was enough. I walked out to the balcony of the venue. The night air was cool and smelled of rain. Below, in the parking lot, I could hear the faint sounds of shouting as my family tried to fit their gifts into their car, arguing over who was to blame. Mr. Henderson walked out quietly, holding a glass of vintage wine, the good stuff, from my private cellar. "Your drink, ma'am," he said respectfully. "Shall I call the car?" "In a moment," I said, taking the glass. I looked out at the city skyline. For years, I had carried the weight of their expectations, their insults, their narrative that I was nothing. I had let it define me. I had let it hurt me. But tonight, the weight was gone. I didn't feel happy, exactly. Revenge isn't happiness. It's relief. It's the setting of a bone that has been broken for a long time. It hurts to set it, but then, finally, you can heal. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted like freedom. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Please, we can talk about this. Don't do this to us." I didn't reply. I blocked the number. Then I blocked my father. Then Jessica. I turned back to Mr. Henderson. "Donate the food to the shelter downtown," I said. "And distribute the flowers to the nursing home. Let's make sure something good comes out of this mess." "Yes, ma'am," he said. I walked toward the elevator, my heels clicking on the marble floor, a sound of authority, of ownership, of self-respect. They say you can't choose your family. That's true, but you can choose when to stop bleeding for them. Some people only understand loss. Tonight, I gave them a masterclass. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the penthouse. The doors closed, shutting them out forever.